Before you do anything, before you make any decision, before you close any door, before you put down what you have been building, stay with this for a few minutes. Not because someone is demanding it of you, but because what you are about to hear may be the most important thing you will encounter at this particular crossroads. You owe yourself that much. Give this the next few minutes. Breathe and listen. You are tired. Not just physically tired, but the kind of tired that settles deep in your chest. The kind that makes you question whether what you are doing matters at all. You have been working, trying, pushing, and the results have been slow, or absent, or worse. They have arrived and then slipped away again. And somewhere inside you, a quiet voice has started asking a question that frightens you more than failure itself. What if I just stop? There is something you need to hear today. Not because it is a new idea, not because it comes wrapped in inspiration or energy you do not currently feel, but because it is true. And truth, more than anything else, is what you need right now. The feeling you are experiencing right now, that heavy, hollow sense that you may be wasting your time, is one of the most common experiences among people who eventually succeed. That is not a comfort offered carelessly. That is a pattern. It repeats itself with remarkable consistency across generations, industries, and circumstances. The people who ultimately achieve something meaningful almost universally pass through exactly the kind of moment you are in right now, not around it or through it. Think about what patience actually means. Not the greeting card version, not the serene, untroubled waiting of someone who has no stakes in the outcome. Real patience is something far harder. It is continuing to act, continuing to show up, continuing to invest your effort into something that has not yet rewarded you, while every rational seeming voice in your head tells you to redirect that energy somewhere else. That kind of patience is not passive. It is one of the most active, most demanding things a human being can do. And here is something worth understanding about the way progress actually works. It is almost never linear. It does not reward effort at a steady, predictable rate. Instead, it tends to accumulate invisibly, quietly, beneath the surface. And then suddenly, without much warning, it compounds into something visible, something real. The problem is that most people abandon the process during the invisible phase, right before the compounding begins. They cannot see the roots growing underground. They only see that nothing has yet broken through the soil, and so they walk away. And the seed they planted, the work they did, the discipline they maintained, goes on to become someone else's harvest. You must understand this clearly. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not evidence that you are failing. It is simply evidence that you are not done yet. There is a story worth knowing about a man named Colonel Harlan Sanders. By the time most people would have long since given up on building anything new, Sanders was in his early 60s, living out of his car, driving across America with a pressure cooker and a recipe he believed in. He had already watched his roadside restaurant fail after a highway was rerouted and the traffic simply stopped coming. He had no savings, no safety net, no investors, and no clear reason for confidence beyond his own conviction. And in that condition, broke, older than most people think of as the starting point for ambition, he began knocking on restaurant doors. He was asking people to try his chicken recipe and pay him a small royalty for every piece they sold. He was rejected over 1,000 times. Not 100, not 200, over 1,000 documented rejections, each one a door closed, a meal refused, a person saying without hesitation that they did not want what he was offering. Most people, after 100 rejections, begin to wonder if the market is speaking. After 200, they begin to believe it. After 1,000, almost no one continues. Sanders continued. He kept driving. He kept knocking. He kept believing that the gap between where he was and where he was going was not permanent. It was just time. Eventually, one door opened. Then another after that. Kentucky Fried Chicken became one of the most recognized brands in the world. He sold the company for what today would amount to hundreds of millions of dollars. But he was 62 years old when he began. 62, with a recipe, a car, and a refusal to accept that a run of rejection meant a permanent verdict. What Sanders understood, perhaps intuitively, perhaps out of sheer stubbornness, is something that people who quit early never get to learn. Rejection is often information, but it is not always the final word. Sometimes it simply means, not yet. Sometimes it means, not here. Sometimes it means, not them. Very rarely does a long run of rejection mean, never. And yet we treat it as though it does. Consider what happens to your thinking when you are in a state of exhaustion and discouragement. The mind, when it is overwhelmed, tends to do something quite specific. It narrows. It begins to treat the present moment as permanent. It takes today's pain and projects it forward indefinitely. It converts a temporary condition into a perceived destiny. This is not a weakness unique to certain people. It is a near universal feature of how human minds process stress. And it is one of the most dangerous traps you will ever face, because decisions made from that narrowed, pain-contracted state of mind tend to be irreversible, while the pain that prompted them is almost always temporary. This is why it matters so much to make your most important decisions not in the depths of discouragement, but in the light of calmer, more rational moments. Not because your feelings are wrong, but because your feelings in a moment of crisis are designed by nature for immediate survival, not long-term strategy. They are pulling you toward relief, and relief and progress are not always the same direction. Ask yourself, as honestly as you can, is the difficulty you are facing right now truly a signal that you should stop? Or is it simply the ordinary, predictable difficulty that accompanies any meaningful pursuit? Is this hardship evidence of a fundamental flaw in your direction? Or is it just the cost of admission to the place you are trying to reach? Those are different questions, and they deserve different answers. There is something instructive in the way a bamboo tree grows. For the first 4 or 5 years after it is planted, virtually nothing visible happens. You water it, you tend to it, you give it sunlight and attention and care, and it does not grow, at least not in any way you can see. Someone walking past would have no reason to believe that anything of consequence was happening beneath the ground. But what is actually happening, invisibly, is that the bamboo is developing a root system of extraordinary depth and density. It is building the infrastructure for everything that comes next. And then, when that foundation is finally ready, the bamboo grows as much as 90 feet in a single season. 90 feet. After 5 years of apparent nothing. This is not a metaphor invented to comfort people who are struggling. It is a description of how certain kinds of growth actually work. The investment you have made, the hours, the sacrifice, the discipline, the consistency, is not gone because you cannot see it. It exists, it is there. The question is not whether it was worth doing. The question is whether you will still be present when it is ready to surface.
And think now about the life of J.K. Rowling. This is not an unfamiliar story, but familiarity has a way of dulling the sharpness of what it actually contains.
Before Harry Potter existed in print, Rowling was a single mother, living on government assistance, writing in a cafe because her apartment was too cold to work in. She had been rejected by 12 major publishing houses, each one telling her, in various professional ways, that her manuscript was not commercially viable, that children's books of that length would not sell, that the market she was imagining was not there. She was not a young person with decades ahead of her feeling nothing but impatient optimism. She was a woman dealing with depression, financial instability, and the fear that the thing she had put so much of herself into would never reach anyone. The 13th publisher said yes, not out of some extraordinary vision that the others had missed, but because the publisher's 8-year-old daughter read the first chapter and refused to put it down. 1 yes, after 12 no's. After poverty and cold and depression, and the very real, very reasonable question of whether any of this was worth continuing. What would the world look like if Rowling had stopped at the 11th rejection, or the 9th, or if she had decided rationally and understandably that 12 professional opinions constituted a verdict? The books that have shaped the imagination of 2 generations of children, the films, the communities, the letters from young readers who say the stories made them feel less alone, all of that depended on one person choosing, one more time, not to stop. This is not about stubbornness for its own sake. It is about understanding that the feedback you receive during a process is not always a reliable indicator of the eventual outcome. The people who said no to Rowling were not incompetent. They were using the best information and judgment they had available. They were simply wrong. And the only way she could prove them wrong was to keep going. There is a temptation, when progress is slow, to search for a different path, to look sideways at what other people are doing, and wonder if you have chosen the wrong direction entirely. This impulse is understandable, but it is worth examining carefully. Changing direction is sometimes wise. There are moments when the honest, clear-eyed assessment is that the path you are on is not right, not because it is difficult, but because it is genuinely not aligned with where you should be going. And in those cases, changing is not giving up. It is calibrating. But there is another kind of direction changing that is not calibration. It is escape. It is the relief-seeking behavior of a mind under stress that mistakes discomfort for misalignment. It is the act of abandoning something that was actually working, just slowly, just invisibly, because the waiting became unbearable. And this kind of change tends to reset the clock completely. It means starting the invisible phase again, from the beginning, in a new direction. And if the pattern repeats, if the same discouragement arises again when results are slow, then the change achieves nothing except delay. The question worth sitting with is this: are you considering quitting because the direction is wrong, or because the duration is painful? Because those are very different situations, and they call for very different responses. Consider now the story of a man who by any measure had sufficient reason to stop trying long before he succeeded. Abraham Lincoln's life before he reached the presidency was, in the plainest terms, a long record of difficulty and failure. He lost his first serious political race at 23. His business failed when he was 24. He suffered a serious emotional breakdown at 27. He lost a congressional race. He lost a Senate race. He lost a vice presidential bid. He was, to the political establishment of his era, a series of promising attempts that had not panned out. A man of apparent ability who could not quite break through. He was elected president at 51. And in the 4 years that followed, he led the country through its most devastating internal conflict, and signed into law the abolition of an institution that had existed on the continent for over 2 centuries. The distance between Lincoln, the repeated failure, and Lincoln, the transformative leader, was not a different man. It was the same man, having persisted long enough, having endured enough, having learnt enough through the losses, to finally be in the right position at the right moment to do the thing that his entire life had, whether he knew it or not, been preparing him for. This is the danger of quitting too early. You cannot see your own preparation while it is happening. You cannot know, at the moment of your greatest discouragement, what the accumulation of your experience is building you toward. You only know that it is hard, and hardness, in the moment, feels like evidence against continuing. But in retrospect, almost universally among those who persisted, it turns out to have been the education. So what do you do with this? Not as an idea, not as inspiration that fades by tomorrow morning, but as something real and actionable. You do less deciding and more continuing. You make a quiet, undramatic commitment to the next small step. Not to the entire journey, not to the distant destination, but to the very next thing in front of you. And then you do that. And then you do the next thing after that. You do not require yourself to be certain about the outcome. You only require yourself to continue. You practice the discipline of separating your long-term decisions from your short-term emotions. When the feeling of wanting to quit arrives, and it will arrive repeatedly because it always does, you treat it not as a command but as information. You acknowledge it. You sit with it. You do not suppress it or pretend it is not there. But you do not hand it the authority to end what you have spent so much of yourself building. You stop measuring your progress against timelines that other people have set, or that you invented in a moment of early optimism. Progress is not a matter of meeting a schedule. It is a matter of direction. As long as you are still pointed toward what matters, still taking steps, still learning, you are succeeding even when it does not feel that way. And you remember, on the days when the weight of it all presses hardest, that the difficulty is not an anomaly. It is not a sign that you are the one person for whom the process does not work, the one person who was mistaken to try. It is the ordinary, universal, unavoidable texture of doing something that matters. Every person who has ever built anything real has felt what you are feeling right now. Most of them felt it more than once. Some of them felt it so many times they lost count, and they kept going. And eventually the ground broke, and the thing they had been growing in the dark finally reached the light. This is where you are, not at the end of your story, not at the moment of final judgment on whether you were right to try. You are somewhere in the middle, in the long, inglorious, unglamorous stretch of time between the beginning and the breakthrough, where the work is real but the reward is not yet visible. And that is precisely the hardest place to be. But it is also, if you can understand what it means, one of the most important, because what you do right now, in this moment, when giving up feels like the reasonable option, will shape what is possible for you more than any single moment of success ever could. The decision to continue, made quietly and without fanfare, in the face of real doubt and real fatigue, is not a small thing. It is the thing. It is the moment that separates, again and again throughout history, the people who eventually look back on their lives with a sense of having done something real from the people who spend their lives wondering what might have been possible if they had only stayed a little longer. Do not make an irreversible decision in a reversible moment. Stay, continue. Not because someone is promising you that it will be easy from here, or that success is guaranteed, or that the next chapter will arrive quickly. None of those things may be true. But continue because you have not yet exhausted what you are capable of. Because the work you have done is not nothing, even when it feels like nothing. Because the roots you have built in the dark are real, and what grows from them is still possible. But only if you are still there when it happens. The world does not need you to be fearless. It does not need you to be certain, or optimistic, or energized in this moment. It only needs you to take the next step. Just the next one. Not the whole journey, not a guarantee. Just the next step. Take it. You are closer than you think. The work is not wasted. Keep going.